The first thing Teresa Jameson noticed about her new husband wasn't the silk blindfold covering his eyes. It wasn't the intricate tattoos crawling up his neck like dark vines. It wasn't even the way he commanded the penthouse suite with the presence of a man who owned every shadow in Seoul. It was the way he caught the champagne glass, mid-fall, without hesitation, without a single fumbled movement. Teresa stood frozen in her white bridal gown, her breath trapped somewhere between her lungs and her throat, watching Kwang-seon's fingers close around the stem with surgical precision. The glass hadn't made a sound, neither had he. But her heart? Her heart was screaming, "You!" The word barely made it past her lips. Kwang-seon turned toward her slowly, deliberately, like a predator who'd been watching his prey all along. And then, God help her, then he reached up with both hands and untied the black silk blindfold. It fell away like a confession. His eyes were dark, sharp, utterly, devastatingly clear, and they were looking right at her. "You're even more beautiful than the files suggested," he said, his voice low and dangerous, as if he'd been waiting years to speak those words aloud. Teresa's hands flew to her mouth, muffling the gasp that tore from her chest. Her knees buckled, the world tilted, because the man she'd been sold to, the blind Mafia heir everyone pitied, everyone underestimated, could see. He had always been able to see. What? She stammered, her pulse hammering against her ribs. "You're not blind?" Kwang-seon's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "No, Teresa. I haven't been blind for 2 years." He took a step closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "But the world thinks I am. And that's exactly how I want it." Her mind reeled. 3 days ago, she'd been in Atlanta, living her life as a corporate negotiator with a corner office and a future she'd built with her own hands. Then her grandmother, sweet, frail Evelyn Brooks, had sat her down in that dim living room and destroyed everything with 6 words. "You were sold before you were born." A blood oath. A 17-year-old debt her father had made to the Kong syndicate before he died. And now the payment was due. The payment was her. She'd been shipped to Seoul like cargo, dressed in white like a sacrifice, married to a man she'd never met in a ceremony where the groom had stumbled through his vows, where she'd had to guide him to the altar by the hand because everyone believed he couldn't see. But he could. He'd seen everything. Why? Teresa's voice cracked, her shock giving way to a sharp, simmering anger. Why would you lie about something like that? Kwang-seon tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle he'd been waiting to solve. Because blind men are harmless, Teresa. Blind men don't see betrayal coming. Blind men don't hunt the people who murdered their mothers. The air between them turned cold. "My mother died in an accident 2 years ago," he continued, his voice dropping to something lethal. "At least, that's what my father's board wants everyone to believe. But I know the truth. Someone in my own family ordered the hit, and they think I'm too weak, too broken, to do anything about it." Teresa's pulse thundered in her ears. "So you've been pretending this whole time? To stay alive? To find the traitor?" He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the barely restrained fury simmering beneath his composure. "And now you're going to help me." "Me?" She shook her head, backing away. "I didn't ask for any of this. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be yours. And yet, here you are." Kwang-seon's gaze softened, just slightly, just enough to make her chest ache. "Believe me, Teresa, I didn't want this either. But you're in this now. The moment you said I do, you became the one person in this entire syndicate that I can trust. You don't even know me." "No," he admitted, "but I know that you saved my life once, 5 years ago. In Atlanta." Teresa's breath caught. "What?" "A car accident. Downtown. You pulled a man from a burning vehicle before it exploded." His expression was unreadable. That man was me. The room spun. She remembered. God, she remembered. The screech of metal, the smell of gasoline, the stranger she'd dragged onto the sidewalk before the flames swallowed everything. She'd never seen his face, never knew his name. "I've been looking for you ever since," Kwang-seon said quietly. "And when I found you, I knew. You were the only one I could bring into this world and trust not to destroy me." Teresa's hands trembled. So the debt, my grandmother, was orchestrated by me. He didn't look away, didn't apologize. "I needed you here, Teresa. And now that you are, I need you to play the role of my eyes in public. I need you to help me maintain the lie, because the moment the world knows I can see, and the moment my enemies know I've been watching them this whole time..." "You're a dead man," she finished. "We're both dead," he corrected. "You're my wife now, my weakness. They'll come for you first." Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Teresa's mind raced. She was trapped, sold, bound to a man who'd orchestrated her entire life falling apart just to bring her here. She should hate him. She should scream. She should run. But when she looked into his eyes, those eyes that had been hidden for so long, she saw something she recognized. Desperation. Grief. A man drowning in shadows, reaching for the only light he could find. "If I do this," she whispered, her voice steadier than she felt, "if I help you, you give me my freedom when it's over." Kwang-seon's jaw tightened. "You have my word. And if you break it?" A dangerous smile ghosted across his lips. "Then you'll be the only person in Seoul with the power to destroy me." Teresa exhaled slowly. She was standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into an abyss she couldn't see the bottom of. But she'd jumped into fire before to save a stranger. Maybe she could do it again. "Fine," she said. "But if we're doing this, we do it my way. No more secrets." Kwang-seon extended his hand. "No more secrets." She took it, and the moment their palms touched, Teresa knew. There was no going back now. Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going. 3 days before Teresa Jamison's world ended, she'd been reviewing a merger contract in her corner office overlooking downtown Atlanta. The numbers had been clean, the deal solid, her future certain. Then her phone rang. "Teresa, baby, you need to come home." Her grandmother's voice had trembled in a way that made Teresa's stomach drop. "Right now." She'd driven through rush-hour traffic with her heart in her throat, every red light feeling like an eternity. When she finally pushed open the door to her grandmother's small brick house in East Point, Evelyn Brooks was sitting in the living room with the lights off, her hands folded in her lap like she was praying. Or confessing. "Grandma, what's wrong? Are you sick?" Evelyn looked up, and Teresa saw something in those aged eyes she'd never seen before. Guilt. "Sit down." Baby." Teresa sat. "There's something I should have told you a long time ago," Evelyn began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something about your father, about a deal he made before you were born." Teresa's pulse quickened. Her father had died when she was 3. A car accident, her grandmother had always said. She had no memories of him, only a single photograph tucked in her wallet of a man with kind eyes and her same smile. "What kind of deal?" Evelyn's hands shook. "Your father. He got involved with some people. Dangerous people. He owed them money. A lot of money. Money he couldn't pay back." She paused, her eyes glistening. "So he made an arrangement. A blood oath. He promised them his firstborn child when she turned 25. The words hung in the air like poison. Teresa laughed. It was a sharp, disbelieving sound. "That's insane. That's not real. People don't..." "They do, baby." Evelyn reached for Teresa's hand, but Teresa pulled away. "In their world, they do. And the debt came due 3 days ago, on your birthday." Teresa stood, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. No, absolutely not. I'm not some medieval bargaining chip. I have a career, a life. They'll kill us. Evelyn's voice cracked. If you don't go, they'll kill everyone in this family. Your cousins, your aunt, me. Tears streamed down her weathered cheeks. I tried, Teresa. I tried to find another way. I've been trying for 17 years, but they found me last week, and they said the time for negotiating is over. Teresa felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. Who are they? The Kong Syndicate. Evelyn's voice dropped to barely a whisper, as if saying the name too loud would summon them. A Korean crime family, one of the most powerful in the world, and you? She swallowed hard. You've been promised to the heir, Kwang-seon Kong. The name meant nothing to Teresa, but the weight of it, the way her grandmother said it like a death sentence, meant everything. I won't do it, Teresa said, even as her hands trembled. I'll go to the police, The police can't help you, baby. These people, they're ghosts. They own judges, politicians, entire police departments. Evelyn stood, her small frame suddenly looking impossibly frail. Please, I know this isn't fair. I know you didn't ask for this. But if you don't go, everyone you love will die. Teresa stared at her grandmother, the woman who'd raised her, and who'd braided her hair and taught her to cook and told her she could be anything she wanted to be, and saw the truth in her eyes. There was no way out. 2 days later, Teresa was on a plane to Seoul. The Grand Seoul penthouse wasn't what she'd expected. She'd imagined something dark and oppressive, like the Mafia movies she'd seen. Instead, she walked into a space flooded with natural light, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a glittering cityscape, modern furniture in shades of gray and white. Beautiful, cold, empty. A woman in a black suit greeted her at the door. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, sharper tone. Miss Jameson, I'm Mrs. Choi, the house manager. Your belongings have been brought to your room. The ceremony is tomorrow at noon. You'll meet Mr. Kong this evening. I'd like to speak with him now, Teresa said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Mrs. Choi's expression didn't change. Mr. Kong will see you when he's ready. Teresa spent the afternoon pacing her assigned bedroom, a pristine space with a king-sized bed and a view that probably cost more than her entire Atlanta apartment. She tried calling her grandmother. Her phone had no signal. She tried the door. It wasn't locked, but 2 men in dark suits stood in the hallway, watching her with dead eyes. She was a prisoner in a gilded cage. When the sun began to set, painting the Seoul skyline in shades of orange and pink, Mrs. Choi returned. Mr. Kong will see you now. Teresa followed her through the penthouse, her heart hammering against her ribs. They stopped in front of a set of double doors. Mrs. Choi knocked twice, then opened them without waiting for a response. Miss Jameson, she announced, then disappeared. Teresa stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, heavy curtains drawn despite the beautiful view. And there, standing by the window with his back to her, was a man in a black suit. Kwang-seon Kong. Even from behind he was imposing. Tall, broad-shouldered, his posture rigid as a blade. Intricate tattoos crawled up the back of his neck, disappearing into his dark hair. You're late, he said without turning around. His voice was deep, cold, utterly devoid of emotion. I'm exactly on time, Teresa replied, her hands clenching into fists. You're the one who kept me waiting all day. A pause. Then, slowly, he turned. Teresa's breath caught. A black silk blindfold covered his eyes. Forgive me, Kwang-seon said, his tone flat. I don't receive visitors often. He moved toward a chair with careful, measured steps, one hand extended slightly as if feeling for obstacles. When he sat, his movements were precise but cautious, the movements of a man who couldn't see. Teresa's anger faltered, replaced by something uncomfortably close to pity. They told me about your condition. Blind, Kwang-seon supplied, his mouth twisting into something that wasn't quite a smile. You can say it. I've been blind for 2 years. Since the accident that killed my mother. I'm sorry. Don't be. He leaned back in his chair, tilting his head in her general direction. I've adapted, and tomorrow you'll become my wife. My eyes, as it were, that's the arrangement. Teresa's jaw tightened. I'm not a person to you, am I? I'm just a tool, a transaction. You're a debt being paid, Kwang-seon said simply. Nothing more, nothing less. Don't confuse this with romance, Miss Jameson. We both know why you're here. Because your family is holding mine hostage. Because your father made a promise he couldn't keep. His voice was ice. I'm simply collecting what's owed. Teresa wanted to scream, to throw something, to run. But instead she forced herself to breathe, to think like the negotiator she'd been trained to be. What exactly do you expect from me? Companionship in public, discretion in private. You'll attend events with me, guide me when necessary, play the role of the devoted wife. He paused. In return, you'll live comfortably. You'll want for nothing, and your family will remain safe. And if I refuse? Kwang-seon's expression didn't change. You won't. The certainty in his voice made her skin crawl. He was right, and they both knew it. I hate you, Teresa whispered. Good, Kwang-seon replied. Hate is honest. We'll build from there. The wedding was a spectacle Teresa would never forget and desperately wanted to erase from her memory. The ceremony took place in a private chapel within the Kwang estate, an architectural masterpiece of glass and stone, filled with white orchids and guests in designer suits worth more than most people's cars. Teresa stood at the entrance in a gown that cost more than her college tuition, her hands shaking so badly she had to clasp them together. This wasn't a wedding. This was a transaction. A show. The music began, something classical and haunting, and the guests rose. Teresa started down the aisle alone. No father to give her away. No friends in the pews, just rows of strangers with cold eyes watching her like she was a curiosity. A novelty. Fresh meat. At the altar, Kwang-seon waited with his father, Chairman Kong, a man whose reputation preceded him like a shadow. Cold, ruthless, the kind of man who'd built an empire on the bones of his enemies. Kwang-seon stood perfectly still, his blindfold in place, his expression unreadable. When Teresa reached the altar, the officiant began speaking in Korean. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Formal, binding, absolute. Then came the part where Kwang-seon was supposed to step forward. He moved and stumbled. His foot caught on nothing, and he lurched forward, his hand reaching out blindly. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Teresa reacted on instinct, grabbing his arm to steady him. I've got you, she murmured, her voice low enough that only he could hear. Kwang-seon's jaw tightened, but he allowed her to guide him the final steps to his place beside her. His hand was warm in hers, steady despite the stumble, too steady. Teresa's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. The ceremony continued. Vows were spoken in Korean, then translated for her benefit. She repeated them mechanically, her voice hollow. When it came time for the rings, Kwang-seon's hand shook slightly as he reached for hers, another carefully placed moment of vulnerability that made the guests whisper sympathetically. But Teresa felt his fingers, strong, precise, as he slid the ring onto her finger without fumbling once. Something was wrong. You may kiss the bride. Kwang-seon turned toward her, his hand lifting to cup her cheek with shocking gentleness. He leaned in slowly, cautiously, as if uncertain of the distance. His lips brushed hers for exactly 3 seconds, and in that moment, Teresa felt it. The way his hand had found her cheek without hesitation, the way he'd angled his head perfectly, the way his breath had been steady, controlled, the way a sighted man would kiss. Her heart stopped, but before she could react, Kwang-seon pulled away, and the crowd erupted in polite applause. He offered her his arm, and she took it, her mind racing as they walked back down the aisle together, husband and wife, prisoner and captor, liar and fool. The reception was a blur. Teresa smiled when expected, nodded when spoken to, and played the role of the blushing bride while her mind screamed. Kwang-seon sat beside her at the head table, his hand occasionally finding hers with just a moment's hesitation, enough to maintain the illusion. But Teresa saw it now. The micro-expressions. The way his head turned toward speakers just a fraction of a second before they spoke. The way he reached for his wine glass with perfect accuracy, then corrected himself at the last moment to make it look uncertain. He was performing. And he was very, very good at it. When the reception finally ended and they were escorted back to the penthouse, Teresa's entire body was wound tight as a spring. The moment the door closed behind them, she spun toward him. "Why are you lying?" Kwang-seon paused in the middle of removing his suit jacket. About? About being blind. Her voice shook. "You can see. I know you can." For a long moment, Kwang-seon said nothing. Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached up and untied his blindfold. It fell away. His eyes were dark, sharp, and fixed directly on her. "Congratulations, Teresa," he said quietly. "You're smarter than I thought." Teresa's hands flew to her mouth, her gasp echoing in the vast space. "Oh my God!" Kwang-seon set his blindfold on the table, his movements casual, as if he hadn't just shattered her entire understanding of reality. "Sit down, we need to talk." "Talk?" Teresa's voice pitched higher. "You've been lying to everyone, to your family, to the world. Why?" "Because blind men are underestimated," Kwang-seon said, his tone matter-of-fact. "Blind men are pitied, dismissed, and most importantly, blind men don't see betrayal coming." He moved to the bar and poured 2 glasses of whiskey, his movements now fluid, confident, nothing like the careful uncertainty he'd displayed all day. He offered one to Teresa. She didn't take it. 2 years ago, my mother died in a car accident," Kwang-seon continued, his voice dropping. "The brakes failed. She went off a cliff on a mountain road. I was in the passenger seat." He paused, his jaw tightening. "I survived. Barely. I was hospitalized for months, and when I woke up, I was blind." "But you're not anymore." "No. I recovered 6 months after the accident. Miraculously, the doctor said." His expression darkened. "But I didn't tell anyone, because while I was blind, recovering, I heard things. Conversations people thought I couldn't understand. And I realized something." "What?" "My mother's death wasn't an accident." His voice was ice. "Someone tampered with the car. Someone in my own family ordered the hit, and they were waiting for me to die too, so they could take control of the syndicate." Teresa's blood ran cold. "So you pretended to still be blind?" "To stay alive. To watch. To listen." Kwang-seon's eyes burned with barely contained fury. "For 2 years I've been playing the role of the weak, broken heir, and in that time I've been systematically identifying every traitor, every board member who thinks they can control me, every rival family that thinks I'm easy prey." "That's why you needed a wife," Teresa breathed. "Someone to be your eyes in public, to maintain the illusion." "Exactly." He took a sip of his whiskey. "I needed someone I could trust, someone outside this world, someone who wouldn't be corrupted by it. And you chose me because of a debt my dead father owed." "I chose you," Kwang-seon corrected, "because 5 years ago, you pulled me out of a burning car in Atlanta. You saved my life without knowing who I was, without asking for anything in return. That kind of person is rare in my world, Teresa. That kind of person is exactly who I needed." Teresa's legs gave out. She sank into the nearest chair, her mind reeling. "So the debt was orchestrated. I had my people track you down, research your family, find leverage." He didn't look apologetic. "I needed you here, and now you are. You ruined my life. I gave you a new one." His voice softened just slightly. "I know you didn't choose this, but you're in it now, and I need your help." "Why should I help you?" Teresa's voice cracked. You lied. You manipulated. You took everything from me. Because if I die, you die, Kwang-seon said bluntly. You're my wife now, my weakness. The moment my enemies know I've been faking, they'll come for both of us. You're not just playing a role anymore. Teresa, you're a target. The words hung between them, heavy and final. Teresa closed her eyes, trying to process everything. A fake blindness, a murdered mother, traitors in the family, and her, caught in the center of it all like a fly in a web. What do you need me to do? She finally asked, her voice hollow. Be my eyes in public. Attend the board meetings, the galas, the family dinners. Watch people's faces when they think I can't see them. Listen to what they say when they think I can't hear properly. Gather information. He paused, and most importantly, never let them suspect the truth. Teresa looked up at him, this dangerous, calculating man who'd turned her entire life upside down. And what do I get in return? Protection. Answers. Kwang-seon's gaze held hers. And when this is over, when I've rooted out every traitor and avenged my mother, I'll give you your freedom. You can walk away. I'll make sure you're safe. You promise? I promise. Teresa didn't trust him, couldn't trust him, but she also didn't have a choice. Fine, she whispered, but no more secrets between us. If we're doing this, we do it together. Kwang-seon extended his hand. No more secrets. She took it, and just like that, Teresa Jameson stopped being a pawn. She became a player in the most dangerous game of her life. The next morning, Teresa woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the disorienting realization that she was married to a man who'd orchestrated her entire life falling apart. She found Kwang-seon in the kitchen, wearing the black silk blindfold again, carefully, too carefully, pouring coffee. The board meeting is at 10, he said without turning around. You'll accompany me. Stay close, watch everyone, and remember, I'm blind. You're my eyes. Teresa grabbed the coffee pot from him. Then let me pour that before you accidentally spill it everywhere. The corner of his mouth twitched. Quick learner. The Kong Syndicate board meeting was held in a high-rise in downtown Seoul, in a conference room that screamed power. 12 men and 2 women sat around a black marble table, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile as Teresa guided Kwang-seon to his seat at the head. Chairman Kong sat at the opposite end, his cold eyes tracking every movement. Gentlemen, ladies, Kwang-seon began, his voice steady despite his blindness. I'd like to introduce my wife, Teresa. She'll be assisting me moving forward. Murmurs rippled around the table. Teresa felt their eyes on her, assessing, dismissing. With respect, Kwang-seon, one man said, his tone dripping with false concern. Perhaps it's time we discuss your role in the company, given your limitations. My limitations haven't stopped me from increasing profits by 30% this quarter, Kwang-seon replied smoothly. With significant help, another board member interjected, help that won't always be available. Teresa's jaw tightened. She leaned close to Kwang-seon, pretending to whisper in his ear while actually watching the room. The man speaking is Park Jun-ho's representative. The woman to your left just exchanged a look with your father. Kwang-seon's expression didn't change, but his hand found hers under the table, a brief squeeze of acknowledgement. I appreciate your concern, he said, his voice like silk over steel. But I assure you, I'm more than capable of leading this family. After all... He paused, his head turning as if he could sense the room. I've been doing it for 2 years. The meeting continued, but Teresa barely heard the words. She was too busy watching. The way Park's representative smiled when discussing the company's vulnerabilities. The way Chairman Kong's expression never changed, even when his own son was being challenged. The way 2 board members kept checking their phones, their faces tense. Something was being planned. Something big. After the meeting, as Teresa guided Kwang-seon back to the car, she kept her voice low. Your father wants you out. I could see it. I know. And Park Jun-ho's people are working with someone on the inside. They kept signaling each other. I know that too. Kwang-seon's voice was grim. But now we have confirmation. You saw what I needed you to see. Teresa's stomach churned. This is insane. How do you live like this? Very carefully. He waited until they were in the car, the privacy partition raised, before removing his blindfold. His eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw something other than cold calculation in them. Exhaustion. Thank you, he said quietly, for playing your part. I didn't have a choice. No. But you did it well. For the next week, Teresa became Kwang-seon's shadow. She attended dinners where she smiled at people who looked at her like she was livestock. She stood beside him at galas, describing art he could secretly see perfectly. She sat in meetings, her hand on his arm, whispering observations while gathering intelligence, and slowly, terrifyingly, she began to understand his world. The Kong Syndicate wasn't just a criminal organization, it was a carefully constructed empire with legitimate businesses fronting illegal operations, real estate, technology, shipping, all of it legal on the surface, all of it hiding something darker underneath. And Kwang-seon wasn't just the blind heir everyone pitied. He was a ghost hunting ghosts, a predator pretending to be prey. One night, after a particularly brutal family dinner where Chairman Kong had openly questioned Kwang-seon's fitness to lead, Teresa found him standing by the penthouse windows, staring out at the city. Without his blindfold. You can't keep doing this forever, she said quietly. I know. When will it end? Kwang-seon was silent for a long moment. When I find who killed my mother. When I've eliminated every threat. When I know you're safe. The last part caught her off guard. Me? He turned, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. You're in this now, Teresa, whether you want to be or not, and I won't let anyone hurt you because of me. It wasn't love. It wasn't even kindness. But it was protection. And in Kwang-seon's world, that was the closest thing to a promise that existed. Teresa wrapped her arms around herself. I saw your father's face tonight. He's planning something. He's always planning something. No, this was different. She met his gaze. I think he's going to try to force you out. Soon. Kwang-seon's expression hardened. Yeah, then we'll be ready. Will we? He crossed the room to her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. I didn't bring you here to watch me fail, Teresa, he said quietly. I brought you here to win. And despite everything, the lies, the manipulation, the impossible situation, Teresa felt something shift inside her. She was tired of being a pawn. Maybe it was time to become a queen. The summons came on a Tuesday morning, delivered by Mrs. Choi with her usual unreadable expression. Chairman Kong requests your presence in his office, both of you, immediately. Teresa's stomach dropped. She glanced at Kwang-seon, who was sitting at the dining table with his blindfold in place, his breakfast untouched. Tell my father we'll be there within the hour, he said calmly. Mrs. Choi bowed and disappeared. The moment the door closed, Kwang-seon removed his blindfold, his jaw tight. This is it. He's making his move. Teresa's pulse quickened. How do you know? Because he's never summoned us together before. He's going to try to humiliate me in front of you, to show you that your husband is weak, unfit. His eyes met hers, dark and determined. And when he does, I need you to do something for me. What? Fight back. Teresa blinked. What? When he attacks me, when he demands I step down, I need you to defend me. Kwang-seon stood, moving toward her. Not as my eyes, not as my assistant, as my wife, as someone who believes I'm capable of leading this family. But I barely know how this world works. You know more than you think. He took her hand, his grip firm. You've spent the last 2 weeks watching, listening, learning. You understand the power dynamics, the weak points, and most importantly, you're not afraid of my father." Teresa wanted to argue that she was terrified of Chairman Kong, but Kwang-seon was right about one thing. She wasn't going to let that man see her fear. "What do I say?" "The truth." A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. "That I'm the best leader this syndicate has. Moi disability or not." Chairman Kong's office was everything Teresa expected. Massive, intimidating, decorated with artifacts that probably cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. The man himself sat behind a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of black stone, his expression as cold and sharp as the day she'd met him at the wedding. "Sit," he commanded without preamble. Teresa guided Kwang-seon to one of the leather chairs facing the desk, playing her role perfectly. She sat beside him, her hand resting on his arm. Chairman Kong's eyes tracked the movement, and something like disgust flickered across his face. "I'll get straight to the point," he said, his voice like gravel. "The board has lost confidence in your ability to lead, Kwang-seon. Your condition has become a liability we can no longer afford." "My condition hasn't affected profits," Kwang-seon replied evenly. "The numbers speak for themselves." "The numbers are irrelevant when the man at the helm can't see threats coming." Chairman Kong leaned forward. "The Park family is circling. Our allies are questioning our strength. And you, blind, dependent on a woman who's been in this world for barely 2 weeks, you are the reason they smell blood." Teresa felt Kwang-seon's arm tense beneath her hand, but his expression remained neutral. "I'm asking you to step down gracefully," Chairman Kong continued. "Take an advisory role. Let someone more capable take the reins." "Someone like you," Kwang-seon said flatly, "if necessary." The silence that followed was suffocating. Teresa could feel the weight of the moment, the trap closing around them. This was it. The power play Kwang-seon had been preparing for, and he needed her to act. Teresa stood, her movement sudden enough that both men turned toward her. "With respect, Chairman Kong," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "The board hasn't lost confidence in Kwang-seon. They've lost patience with waiting for him to fail. There's a difference." Chairman Kong's eyes narrowed. "You've been in this family for 2 weeks, girl. You don't get to speak on—" "I get to speak because I've spent those 2 weeks watching." Teresa cut him off, her heart hammering but her voice strong. "I've attended every meeting, every dinner, every negotiation, and I've seen something everyone else seems determined to ignore." "And what's that?" "That Kwang-seon is the only person in this entire organization who actually cares about building something sustainable instead of just maintaining power." She glanced at her husband, who sat perfectly still, his expression unreadable. He's increased profits while reducing risk. He's strengthened international partnerships. He's modernized operations that were stuck in the last century, all while dealing with a disability that would have destroyed a lesser man. "Pretty speech," Chairman Kong said coldly, "but speeches don't win wars." "No, strategy does. Vision does. Leadership does." Teresa leaned forward, her hands gripping the back of Kwang-seon's chair. "And if you force him out now, you'll be handing the Park family exactly what they want, a fractured Kong syndicate at war with itself. They're not circling because Kwang-seon is weak. They're circling because he's strong, and they're trying to provoke you into removing the one person who can actually beat them." The room fell silent. Chairman Kong studied Teresa with an expression that could have been respect or fury. She honestly couldn't tell. "You think you understand this world," he said quietly, dangerously. "You don't. Maybe not. But I understand numbers. I understand strategy. And I understand that betting against Kwang-seon is the worst decision you could make." She straightened. "Sir." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Chairman Kong's gaze shifted to his son. "You've trained her well." "I haven't trained her at all," Kwang-seon replied. She's just smart enough to see what's obvious. Chairman Kong's jaw tightened. You have 3 months. If the park situation isn't resolved by then, this conversation happens again, and next time your wife's opinion won't matter. It wasn't a victory, but it was time. Kwang-seon stood, and Teresa immediately moved to guide him. As they left the office, she could feel Chairman Kong's eyes burning into her back. The moment they were in the car, privacy partition up, Kwang-seon removed his blindfold and turned to her. That was incredible, he said, and for the first time since she'd met him, his smile was genuine. Teresa's hands were shaking. I thought he was going to kill me. He considered it. Kwang-seon's smile faded. Which means you're officially a target now. They'll come for you to get to me. They? Everyone. He was right. The first attempt came 3 days later. Teresa was leaving a boutique in Gangnam. Mrs. Choi had insisted she needed a proper wardrobe for upcoming events, when a black van pulled up beside her on the street. The door slid open, and 2 men lunged out. Teresa screamed, stumbling backward. Her security detail, 2 men Kwang-seon had assigned to shadow her, reacted instantly, stepping between her and the attackers. Gunshots echoed through the street, sending pedestrians scrambling. One of her guards went down, blood blooming across his chest. Teresa ran. She didn't think, didn't plan, just ran blindly through the crowded street. Behind her she could hear shouting, more gunshots, the screech of tires. Her heart was in her throat, her breath coming in ragged gasps. A hand grabbed her arm, yanking her into an alley. Teresa screamed, twisting, fighting. It's me, Kwang-seon. He was there, no blindfold, his eyes sharp and alert as he pulled her deeper into the alley. Another man was with him, one of his personal guards. How did you? Teresa gasped. I track your phone. He was already moving, pulling her toward a side street where a car waited. Get in, now. They dove into the vehicle, and it peeled away from the curb just as the black van rounded the corner behind them. Park family? Teresa asked, her voice shaking. Most likely. Kwang-seon's expression was carved from stone. They're testing our defenses, seeing how protected you are. Your guard is dead because of me. My guard is dead because the parks are getting desperate. He turned to her, his hand cupping her face with unexpected gentleness. Are you hurt? Teresa shook her head, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Good, because it's going to get worse before it gets better. He wasn't exaggerating. Over the next 2 weeks, Teresa's life became a series of close calls and narrow escapes. A suspicious package delivered to the penthouse that turned out to be a bomb, a near-miss car accident that wasn't an accident at all, anonymous threats sent to her phone, her email, messages that described exactly what they would do to her in graphic detail. She stopped sleeping, started jumping at shadows, began to understand why Kwang-seon lived the way he did, always watching, always calculating, always 3 steps ahead because anything less meant death. I can't do this, she told him one night, her voice breaking. They were in the penthouse, surrounded by security, but she didn't feel safe. She didn't think she'd ever feel safe again. I'm not built for this world. You are, Kwang-seon said quietly. He was sitting across from her, his blindfold off, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. You're stronger than you know. I'm terrified. Good. Fear keeps you alive. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. But Teresa, I need you to hold on just a little longer. We're close. I'm close to identifying the mole, to ending this. Just a little longer. Teresa wanted to scream that she didn't care about his revenge, his plans, his war. She wanted to go home, back to Atlanta, back to her boring office job and her safe, predictable life. But she looked at Kwang-seon, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't expected. He was terrified too. Not for himself. For her. What happens at the charity gala tomorrow? She asked instead. The parks will make another move. I'm certain of it. His jaw tightened. And this time, I'm going to be ready. The annual Kong Syndicate Charity Gala was held at the Grand Joseon Hotel, a glittering affair attended by Seoul's elite and underworld in equal measure. Teresa wore a midnight blue gown that probably cost more than her car back in Atlanta, her hair swept up, diamonds at her throat that were definitely real and definitely worth more than her life. She looked like she belonged. She felt like she was going to throw up. "Remember," Kwang-seon murmured as they entered the ballroom, his blindfold firmly in place, his hand on her arm. "Stay close to me. Don't drink anything you haven't seen poured. Don't go anywhere alone. You're expecting something bad. I'm expecting everything." His fingers tightened on her arm. "But Teresa, if something happens, if things go wrong, I need you to run. Don't try to help me. Don't be a hero. Just run. I'm not leaving you." "You will if I tell you to." His voice was steel. "Promise me." Teresa didn't promise. She couldn't. The gala was a parade of false smiles and dangerous people pretending to be civilized. Teresa guided Kwang-seon through the crowd, playing her role perfectly, whispering descriptions of people and places while her eyes constantly scanned for threats. And then she saw him. Park Jun-ho, the rival heir she'd heard so much about but never met. He was standing near the bar with several men, and when his eyes landed on her and Kwang-seon, his smile was predatory. "He's here," she whispered to Kwang-seon. "Park Jun-ho, by the bar." "I know." Kwang-seon's voice was calm, too calm. "He's been watching us since we arrived." The evening progressed with agonizing slowness. Speeches were made, donations announced. Teresa's nerves were wound so tight she thought she might snap. And then the lights went out. Screams erupted in the darkness. Teresa felt Kwang-seon's hand grab hers, pulling her close. "Stay with me," he commanded. When the emergency lights flickered on, bathing the ballroom in dim red light, Teresa saw them, men with guns, moving through the crowd with deadly purpose, heading straight for them. "Run!" someone shouted. But Kwang-seon didn't run. Instead, his hand went to his face, and in one fluid motion he ripped off his blindfold. His eyes locked onto the approaching men with perfect and deadly clarity. "Get down!" he shouted, pushing Teresa behind him. The world exploded into chaos. Kwang-seon moved like a man who could see perfectly, because he could. He grabbed a chair, swinging it into the first attacker with brutal efficiency. His security detail materialized from the shadows, guns drawn. But Kwang-seon was already moving, his movements those of someone who'd been trained for this his entire life. Teresa watched in frozen shock as her blind husband took down 3 men with his bare hands. The secret was out. "Go!" Kwang-seon shouted at her, blood on his knuckles, his eyes wild. "Teresa, go!" But before she could move, an arm wrapped around her throat from behind. "Everybody freeze!" Park Jun-ho's voice rang out. "Or she dies!" The ballroom went silent. Kwang-seon froze mid-motion, his eyes locking onto Teresa's. She could feel the cold press of a gun against her temple. "Well, well," Park Jun-ho said, his breath hot against her ear. "Looks like the blind king can see after all. How long have you been lying, Kwang-seon?" "Let her go." Kwang-seon's voice was deadly quiet. "This is between us." "But she's so much more fun to hurt." Park's grip tightened, making Teresa gasp. "You should have stayed blind. Should have stayed weak. Now you've shown everyone what you really are. A liar. A fraud. Your own father will destroy you for this." Kwang-seon's eyes never left Teresa's, and in that moment she saw a calculation happening behind those dark eyes, a decision being made. "You want me?" Kwang-seon said, his voice eerily calm. "Take me. Let her go, and I'll come quietly." "No," Teresa gasped. "Touching," Park sneered, "but I think I'll kill her anyway. Just to—" He never finished the sentence. Kwang-seon moved faster than Teresa thought humanly possible. 1 second he was across the room, the next he was on them, his hand striking Park's wrist with brutal precision. The gun went flying. Park stumbled, and Kwang-seon caught Teresa as she fell, spinning her away from danger. What followed was a blur of violence. Kwang-seon fought like a demon, no longer pretending, no longer hiding. His men joined in, and within minutes, Park Junho and his crew were subdued, bleeding, defeated. But the damage was done. Everyone had seen. The blindfold was gone. The lie was shattered. Chairman Kong stood at the edge of the ballroom, his expression unreadable as he watched his son, his seeing, capable, deadly son, help Teresa to her feet. "You lied to me," the old man said, and his voice cutting through the silence. "To all of us." Kwang-seon met his father's gaze without flinching. "I survived. That's what you taught me to do. You made a fool of this family. I saved this family." Kwang-seon's voice was hard. "While you and the board were trying to push me out, I was hunting the people who killed my mother. Park Junho wasn't working alone. He had help from inside our organization." His eyes swept the room, landing on a board member who'd gone pale. "Help from people you trusted." The silence that followed was deafening. "You have proof?" Chairman Kong demanded. "Recordings, financial transfers, everything you need." Kwang-seon didn't smile. "I've been building this case for 2 years, and now it's done." For a long moment, father and son stared at each other. Then, slowly, Chairman Kong nodded. "We'll discuss this later. Privately." He turned to his men. "Clean this up. And someone call the police. We have guests who've overstayed their welcome." As the room erupted into controlled chaos, Kwang-seon pulled Teresa close, checking her for injuries. "Are you okay?" His hands were gentle despite the violence they'd just committed. Teresa was shaking, adrenaline and shock coursing through her. "You could have died. Not while you needed me." His thumb brushed her cheek, and Teresa realized she was crying. "I promised I'd keep you safe. I don't break my promises." That night, back at the penthouse with security tripled and the city lights glittering below them, Kwang-seon found Teresa standing by the windows. "It's over," he said quietly, coming to stand beside her. "Park is in custody. The mole's been identified. The board is back in line. You're safe now." "Am I?" Teresa's voice was hollow. "Because it feels like this will never be over. There will always be someone trying to kill you. Someone using me to get to you. This is your world, Kwang-seon. This violence, this danger, and I don't know if I can live in it." Silence stretched between them. "Then we'll leave," Kwang-seon said. Teresa turned, shocked. "What?" "We'll leave. All of it. The syndicate, Seoul, this life." His eyes were serious, intense. "I've spent 2 years hunting ghosts, Teresa. 2 years living for revenge, and tonight, when I saw that gun to your head, I realized something." "What?" "None of it matters if you're not safe, if you're not happy." He took her hands, his grip warm and solid. "I can walk away, turn the syndicate over to someone else. We can disappear, but start over somewhere new, live a quiet life." Teresa stared at him, unable to process what he was saying. "You'd give up everything? Your power? Your family? Your revenge?" "For you." Kwang-seon's voice softened. "Yes." "Why?" "Because somewhere between the lies and the danger and the bloodshed, I fell in love with you." He said it simply, without drama, like it was the most obvious truth in the world. "And I'd rather live a normal life with you than rule an empire alone." Teresa's breath caught. She thought about Atlanta, about her old life, about the freedom she'd lost when her grandmother told her about the debt, and she realized something. She didn't want to go back. Not to Atlanta, not to her old life, not without him. "I love you too," she whispered, "even though you're absolutely insane, even though you turned my life upside down." Even though every logical part of my brain is screaming that this is a terrible idea. Kwang-seon smiled. A real smile, bright and beautiful and free. So what do we do? Teresa took a breath. We stay, but we change things. We take this criminal empire and turn it into something legitimate. We use all this power and money and influence to build something that doesn't require violence, and we do it together, as actual partners. That's a big ask. You said you fell in love with me because I'm smart and strong and don't take your crap. Teresa met his gaze. So let me prove it. Let me help you build something better. Kwang-seon studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, we'll do it your way. One condition, though. What's that? No more blindfolds, no more lies, no more secrets. She stepped closer. If we're doing this, we do it with our eyes open. Deal. And when he kissed her, Teresa finally understood what home felt like. 1 year later, Teresa stood in the nursery of their new apartment, not the penthouse, something smaller, warmer, with actual windows that opened, and watched her husband hold their daughter. She has your eyes, Kwang-seon said softly, his own eyes, no longer hidden, no longer pretending, filled with wonder as he looked at the tiny baby in his arms. And your stubborn chin, Teresa replied, smiling. The past year had been a whirlwind. Kwang-seon had slowly transitioned the Kong Syndicate's operations from underground crime to legitimate business, technology primarily, using all those connections and resources to build a tech empire that rivaled Samsung. It hadn't been easy. Chairman Kong had fought him every step of the way. But eventually, even the old man had seen the wisdom in changing with the times. They were clean now, legal, boring almost. Teresa had never been happier. What are you thinking about? Kwang-seon asked, looking up from their daughter. That I should write your grandmother a thank you note, Teresa said wryly. He laughed. For selling you to a Mafia family? For teaching me that sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best things in our lives. She crossed the room, wrapping her arms around both of them. I hated you when we met. I know. And now I can't imagine life without you. I know that too. He kissed her forehead. Thank you. For what? For seeing me when I couldn't let anyone else. For fighting beside me. For giving me a reason to want something more than revenge. His eyes met hers. For saving my life twice, once in Atlanta and once in Seoul. Teresa smiled. Well, someone had to keep you alive long enough to become an honest man. Their daughter made a small sound, and they both looked down at her, this tiny, perfect thing they'd created together. A new generation, a fresh start, a future built not on blood debts and blindfolds, but on truth and trust and love. What do you see when you look at her? Teresa asked quietly. Kwang-seon was silent for a moment, his eyes never leaving their child's face. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. Everything. Thank you for following Teresa and Kwang-seon's journey. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you just to know how far our story has reached. What did you think of Kwang-seon's secret? Would you have trusted him? Let me know in the comments below.